So today I'm with Rosalind Picard, who's a scientist and an engineer, and she's a professor at MIT's Media Lab and a faculty member at the MIT Center for Neurobiological Engineering.
Yeah, the original idea behind affective computing was to give computers the skills that could show better respect for human feelings. And our real traction began when we started working with people on the autism spectrum. In fact, not just like working based on what the literature said they needed, but working alongside them and learning from them much more than I learned from reading hundreds of scientific papers. And I was informed that I was missing a lot of their stress, that they had atypical ways of showing stress. And in fact, we had ways of monitoring stress in the lab. We just had to make it so that it could be wearable and comfortable and able to be interfaced with in more useful ways. So we built wearables at the time, like little sweatbands containing lots of electronics that could leave the lab, go home, go to school, go to therapy, and send out a wireless signal telling people if your physiological stress, your autonomic nervous system, in particular your sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight response, if that was, climbing or if it was going down. And we'd see things like, person wearing heavy perfume would come in the room and it would climb, like major olfactory sensory assault. And then somebody rocking or doing something calming and it would just go down like a slide on the playground. And as we were giving people the ability to learn about and communicate this objective data, one little boy, a little brother of one of my students, had a whopper of a signal. And I wasn't there at the time. I just was looking at the data back at my office at MIT, and I saw this huge signal. And furthermore, it was on one wrist and not the other. He was wearing two sensors at the time. And I thought, gee, is a sensor broken? How can you have this giant peak on one side and not the other? Was he like, you can't be stressed on one side, can you? And so I thought our sensors were broken. And as I dug into it more, I learned that actually at that moment, and actually in our data at the time, it looked like the data peaked before that moment, he had a grand mal seizure. And that was my beginning of learning about epilepsy and starting to learn alongside so many people who deal with it on a daily basis. Then we learned about the risk of SUDEP, sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, a low risk, but a very real and serious risk that is more likely to happen if people are alone when they have a seizure. So we realized we could build a wearable that gave out an alert and got somebody there, so you would be less likely to be alone. So we needed a company to do that. And as I surveyed all these amazing choices, including companies everybody's heard of, I realized the smartest team was at this little Italian company, Empatica. They had the best brains and the best ability to do stuff. So we teamed up and formed Empatica, the US company. And then we started to make Embrace, this device here that is running the AI machine learning on board to detect generalized tonic-clonic seizures, send an alert, and that is now FDA cleared, and it's out there, not only helping provide alerts, but also collecting data for science.
I imagine with children at risk of SUDEP, this must be a real challenge for their parents. Presumably, this could change the way that the parents actually live, as well as alerting about the child having a massive seizure.
Yeah, we have heard so many stories that make my heart sing, where people like who were afraid to leave the house because what if they had a seizure and nobody saw them and could be there? Now they could leave the house and have, nothing's perfect, but a better chance of it detecting it, sending it to your phone. If your device is charged, your phone is charged, the signal works, and then the phone calls a caregiver who hopefully is told that it's important to get there fast. You need caregivers who can be close by where you are. If you approve, it will give the GPS location. We want to respect everybody's privacy. So these are options you can control. And then somebody hopefully gets there fast, checks on you if you need first aid, if you hit your head, if you need to be turned on your side, if you stop breathing, which is one of the biggest risks we're seeing now for SUDEP. then, stimulation, and possibly in some cases forced oxygen. And just in all fairness, there are some cases where even a doctor is present and, they're unable to successfully treat the person. But more than that, we see lots and lots of great cases where people get there and they find you blue and not breathing, just horrifying nightmare. And just repositioning and stimulating, in many cases, a person starts breathing again and they're just fine. So we need to be there for each other. The device does not save lives, but a person can be there and help save your life, and the device can help a person get there. My dream of could we see if we're getting sick looks like it's starting to happen. We got data from our wearable, the E4 data, from studies we were doing with Columbia and Duke and DARPA and Health and Human Services in the US from two kinds of flu, the rhinovirus and H1N1. We got this years ago. We started working on it and it was looking interesting, but it wasn't like a high priority. Then COVID hit. And so we went back into that data and very rigorously examined what was happening. And we found that we were actually able to predict the viral infection with very high sensitivity and specificity, significantly better than random. And we are now thankfully funded by HHS and the US Army doing big studies, and the UK, in England and America, lots of hospitals collecting gold standard, not only the heart rate, motion, temperature, but now the electrodermal activity as well. Continuous, highly sampled, rich data with the ability to run AI in real time with the next device coming out, the Embrace Plus, which will hopefully, if the results are as good for COVID as they have been for the influenza, do viral infection forecasting. And what that means is, let's say I feel fine, I'm going to visit grandma, and normally in this time, you might not even be allowed to do that, or you might have to keep, certainly you're going to keep a distance and wear a mask, but maybe if my device tells me looks like high probability of infection, maybe I delay that visit and I go and I get a test. And tonight I drink more water, take my vitamin C, go to bed early. If I schedule a test tomorrow and it's COVID, no visiting grandma, right? Not even with a mask. If I take it and it's flu, maybe I can take Tamiflu or something, right? Early. So we aren't claiming to tell what you're getting, but we're detecting this early inflammatory response that affects, in particular, the sympathetic nervous system, which affects several of the measures that we pick up. I used to be a skydiver, right? Even though I was scared of heights, it was one of my ways of overcoming my fear. And I also used to be this shy little kid who used to feign stomach aches to get out of show and tell. I hated getting up in front of the class. I was terrified. This, just horrible. And it was like step by step, right? You overcome it. My skin conductance goes up, my palms get sweaty just remembering my childhood, right? How scary that was. Yeah. So what you do is so inspiring to everybody when you frame it as like, okay, what's your fear? What are the things that make it dangerous? How do you take steps to put in place the guardrails, the safety, talk about that? And then now what's the equivalent? I love your one-step challenge. I think we need that for everybody, not just people with epilepsy. We all need that challenge to not just dream of things that it would be cool to do, but to be emboldened and encouraged and to support one another in taking a step in that direction, even if it's a little teeny step, and also encouraged and supported too, if that step doesn't work, to not be discouraged, but to try it again, right? To try it in a slightly different direction, but to not give up. I think more than ever now, we need to be encouraging one another to have that hope that we can take those steps and go places that we didn't think we could go.